Imagine you were so tormented by your abuse, abandonment, and neglect that you actually became the abuser of somebody else's life. You see, I grew up in a foster care system, but the reason was my mother was an addict who struggled with her mental health. And I've since forgiven her because I understand she did not have access to the tools and the resources necessary to get the help that she needed to be the best mother that she could be. When she was manic or her mental health was slipping or she was drunk or high, she was abusive physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I also experienced abuse in several of the foster care houses that I was in. I think the thing that was most traumatic for me, though, was the neglect and the abandonment of my mother. I remember when we were living in a shelter in a place called Norwell, Massachusetts, next to Scituate, and my mom just didn't come home for days. And we wound up in the foster care system, and then she turned up. I remember when we were living in Salem, and my mom would disappear on these binges where she would go drink and drug or do whatever she was doing, and then come back. Sometimes I would have to be responsible for my younger siblings. Sometimes we just didn't know if she was ever coming home. And I remember the way that made me feel. The way, as a little girl, I would stare out the window every time I heard a car pull up, hoping it was her. Or the way I would fear that something dangerous happened to her because I knew the situations. Even though I was young, I could understand the situations that she was putting in herself were not safe, that they were dangerous because sometimes we were in these situations with her and witness things that no kid should have to see and experience. But those experiences and that trauma, it lives in you. It caused me to have extreme anxiety and a fear of being left, a fear of being not enough, a fear of being abandoned, a fear of someone being chosen over me. And I didn't understand or realize how much that impacted me till I got into a relationship and it showed up as emotional or mental abuse. And I didn't even know I was doing it. It was subconscious. I had a need to control every aspect of the relationship so my inner child could feel safe knowing this person is not going to leave me. I mean, counting followers, questioning time limits on coming home from work. Yesterday it took you 20 minutes. Why today it took 25? Over analyzing contact with people of the opposite gender. Oh, you hugged them too long. What was that about? That interaction seemed flirtatious. I was operating in a way that was so controlling that the person didn't feel comfortable being themselves, that they felt they had to dim their light in order to appease to the anxiety that they didn't cause. And I went into this relationship thinking I was ready. I thought I was so ready because I had did the time alone, because I allowed myself to have the space before jumping into something with somebody, because I knew I had some work to do. But you see, I became aware during my time single of my childhood trauma and how it was affecting me in my day to day. Because that control is deeper than a romantic relationship. It's how I live my life. I don't like being in public outings because I can't control every aspect of what's going on. I don't like people surprising me and popping up because I can't control that interaction. I have an innate need to control every aspect of every situation in my life out of fear. Because when I don't have that control, when the control is not solely reliant on me, it's dangerous. But at least that's how it's perceived because of my past experiences. So in this relationship, when I was controlling this individual subconsciously, my intention didn't match my impact. So my intention was to keep myself safe. My intention was to make sure she didn't leave. My intention was to show her that I love you so much, I don't want anybody else to have you. But that's not love. And I know that. But my actions didn't match. And that's something that my therapist has recently taught me, that sometimes Because of the things we went through, our impact, we don't even realize it. And it doesn't match our intention, right? And that doesn't mean that the other person's feelings aren't valid and their experience isn't true, right? I take full accountability for the way I made that person feel in a relationship because it wasn't fair to her. I got into a relationship thinking I was ready, thinking I was equipped with the tools, yet I wasn't. And unfortunately, I would not have known that unless I was in a relationship with someone who was brave enough to call me on my shit and say, yeah, I love you. I do. But I love me more. And in order for me to be my best self, I can no longer continue. Because me allowing you to control every aspect of my life is me not walking in my power. Is me not walking in my light. And I totally understand and respect and am totally grateful because it opened my eyes that, like, if at this stage in my life where I've done so much work on myself, if I could treat you like that, how was I when I was a drunk? How was I when I was not my best self, when I hadn't had any tools, let alone the lack of the tools necessary to be better in these particular circumstances? I carried a lot of shame about it. It put me into a deep depression. My heart was broken that I could, be that person in somebody's life that I cared about, in somebody's life that I love, somebody's life that I valued, someone who had shown me for the first time true, unconditional love, that loved me despite what that meant for them, and still chose to love me even after we split. I think that I learned that we all want unconditional love, and there's a difference between that and unconditional tolerance. This person chose not to tolerate my behavior because they deserved more, right? But they could love me anyways. I still want to see you do well. I know that you can do the work to become the you that you want to be. But until you do so, I can't be the person for you. I can't stand by you. I can support you from a distance. I can love you from afar. But I have to do what's best for me. And you have to take accountability and learn and grow from that. And I did. And I am continuing to. It's something me and my therapist touch on a regular basis. And one of the things she told me is to create a relationship with that controlling behavior, with that shame, and say thank you, right? Because that behavior came from a place where I had to act from survival. When I was operating from survival mode, I needed to be over analytic about circumstances because it could mean something happened to my mother or something that was going to happen to me because of the people, places, and things my mother had us around. Or I had to be over controlling of my siblings because mommy's not here. And I don't know when she's coming home. So we need to be quiet. We need to listen in case somebody comes to the door. We need to get our story straight. We need to be like this. We have to come straight home after school because if not, somebody might know mommy's not here. There were so many things that went into being an abandoned, neglected, and abused child that forced me to behave in that way. But those tools that I used to keep myself safe are not necessary when I am in love, when I am in partnership with somebody. I don't need to control you to make sure that you love me because you love me by choice. And if you choose to no longer love me, that is okay. Your choice to not love me anymore, your choice to not stand by me anymore doesn't mean that I'm not worthy. It doesn't mean that I'm not enough. It doesn't mean that I lack value. It just means that we're not meant to be, and that is okay. So learning to be grateful for the parts of me that no longer serve me, because at one point, although they couldn't be perceived as negative, they served a purpose. They kept me safe, they kept me alive. But now, I have no use for them. I can keep myself safe. I can keep myself alive. And love isn't gonna hurt me enough that it's dangerous. So, yeah, this is one of my, most vulnerable things to talk about because, just saying it out loud kind of, it feels heavy, but I'm a firm believer in taking accountability and vulnerability, creates connectivity, and then there might be somebody else who has this overwhelming fear of being left, or has this overwhelming anxiety that forces you to be controlling in a way that's unhealthy, and you're not even aware of how much it's affecting the people, places, and things around you, because it's a tool that you've used for so long to keep yourself safe. But just because it was a tool we needed in our toolbox when we were younger, that doesn't mean we can bring it to hurt the people that we love. It's so important to stop bleeding on people that didn't cut us. And awareness is the first step, but getting better tools and coping skills to use when that anxiety shows up, when that fear shows up, to prove to yourself, like, hey, Kalia, is this your trauma speaking, or is this a logical mind? And for me, a lot of times, it's not a logical mind. It wasn't a logical mind. And I'm learning to better analyze my thoughts. And I think it's important to stay single until you have control of that, until you've done the work on a deep level. Because it's, like I said, it's not fair to the other person. It's not fair to other people. As much as we want to love and be loved, it's not fair to drag somebody else into our trauma when we don't have the capability to reciprocate that love, because the pain of our past is lingering in our present. So if you or anybody you know has gone through something like this, or you've been a victim of this, or you've been the suspect, the protagonist in this type of situation, it's okay. I hope that you go to therapy, get the help, get the tools necessary. It's okay that you thought you had to behave that way, but once you're aware that it's not okay, it's important for you to do the work. And going to therapy is okay. Talking to somebody is okay. Getting help is okay. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. To acknowledge that something that you thought you needed is no longer working for you. I love you, and I hope this helps.